There is a real lady. Anyway, but anyway, so it actually was pretty interesting to not know sometimes, or to have it be from that distance. And again, I actually do think it would be a spoiler to talk about even the cinematography of it, because I think that people are going down rabbit holes of why it's shot the way that it's shot as it goes on. But yeah, I always just sort of feel like someone's watching. What did you think, Nizha?
I mean, I don't know if I can really answer that because this is my first time acting, so it was very odd not knowing where the camera was.
Do you feel like it helped? Like, I can't tell if, because for me personally, when the camera's there, I'm thinking about there's a camera there. As an actor, you have to pretend there's not a camera. So does not seeing it help in a way?
It did.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely did.
Well, yeah, I imagine if what it does, or the goal is like, I guess you're supposed to not even think about it and just exist within what you're feeling. So,
and not to have crew like hovering right there. Because there's a lot of, there's several people in the show that haven't acted a ton before, and it could have helped the performances, but
I don't know if anybody has seen like early old candid camera.
Sure.
They like shot on 16mm black and white film, but they literally would be hiding in vans and behind walls, and so because the cameras were so big, now it's you kind of, because your phone can get into the corner and stuff, it's a little bit, you kind of don't have that feeling. But when you watch those older episodes of the show, you see like a car like being filmed from across the street, and then the people who are like the marks in the show walk out of frame, and then the car just slowly drives to get the back of the shot.
It's very cinematic.
Yeah, it is really very
I remember that
cinematic.
really early on, you guys talking about that candid camera, and it really is like, it's kind of beautiful when you just watch it for the camera work alone.
Yes, it's an amazing experience.
So we have to talk about Asher's confrontation with Monica, the local news reporter. We learned so much about Asher and Whitney in that moment. So for Emma and Nathan, what kind of conversations did you have leading up in preparation for that scene, in terms of like because they both have such very different reactions, and like how did you settle on what your approach was going to be?
Oh yeah, I guess I think the level of the character has like, the level of anger, I think we had like discussions about, because there are moments I think where that was sort of like built in, I think a little later, as sort of like that this guy has like, he can sort of snap and then kind of realizes when he snaps that he is snapping and tries to pretend it's not happening. I've seen people do this type of thing and try to like act like everything's normal, but I think it's like, it felt like it was pretty good with like what the characters are always feel like they're being watched. I mean, that has to do with how it's shot too, where they're projecting that onto almost everyone around them, and that's what I think makes it so uncomfortable, is because it's not like these characters don't care, it's like what's uncomfortable is that they care too much. And sometimes it's about the right thing, and sometimes it's about the wrong thing, but they really do care more than most people. And so it's uncomfortable because even when they care about the right thing, you sort of want to be like, stop caring.
And it's also like, even like, that's one of the benefits, that because once we got the show to make the whole show, we didn't have to shoot the pilot first. So we were able to learn and understand parts of characters, and the storyline shifted based on performances and everything. So it allowed us to kind of add these things back into the first episode. One of them in particular was this idea that Asher thinks he understands what is the right thing to do in a moment, and halfway through realizes it's not, and then has to kind of walk it back and make sure everything's okay. So there's that level that's always kind of there.
Well, and Emma, you're just watching Whitney, like she starts blinking faster, and her smile, and it's like, how conscious were you in that moment of like, you have to communicate so much with your face, but obviously she doesn't want to say anything.
I think that was the challenge of Whitney all the way through, is that a lot of what happens with her is what she's not saying rather than what she is. which is my favorite kind of acting to get to do. So that one, I mean, that was like a last minute thing. I think you were, because Nathan and I were together in the scene, and Nathan was directing, but I think that after we had done a lot of that, then he was like, what if you just smiled the whole time? Like, just a scene.
Yes.
Nathan's like, yeah, let's just try that. And her just like, the entire time, and it felt so wrong doing it, that I was like, but that's what makes it right, because it's so insane that Asher's like having this meltdown, and he's just like smiling like this will fix it, and it's so psychotic.
The thing is, that sounds like it was not fair of me to ask of that, because that's a really difficult thing to do. To be smiling and to show an emotion behind the smile, and then an emotion behind that is so insane. So I always
so
love
fun.
to watch. Yeah, it's crazy.
I was gonna ask if that moment with the snap, when he literally snaps, was that in the script, or was that something that?
Yeah, that was in the script.
Yeah.
Or something that I got so angry that I
But
did.
my favorite though is Nathan was pulling from like the deep breath. I remember when you pulled out the deep breath, it was like, oh my God. You know, I was so excited that it was just like, it's really, those are the moments that I find so fun to kind of see. But
Emma, you mentioned a little bit, like, there's so many moments in the show that really, it's an effective use of silence, of pauses, and you're really seeing so much happen on the characters' faces, but you're not saying anything, and, you know, you talked a little bit about this being your favorite type, but Nizhonniya, in your experience, you know, since this was your first job, I mean, there are moments later in the series where we can absolutely tell that Kara has a lot of thoughts going on, but she's really, you know, she is communicating in a way that she feels is appropriate at the time. And I'm just wondering, how did you approach those scenes where you really have to communicate so much without actually saying dialogue?
With my character, honestly, it was just thinking about like how much I don't like Whitney. Like the people that I was using, and people that I know that were like her character, and I was just constantly just like getting in the zone, like. But in real life, I would actually say something to them, but for this, like I would just think about like how much I don't like her character.
In episode 2, I remember I was texting you during the scene, like, I was insulting, like.
We were talking shit.
The whole time, while the scene was actually happening, we were texting off camera bad things about what was happening. I was like, who are you with? What's going on? Why is it taking so long? And we were just bad-mouthing them right in front of their faces, and nobody had any idea other than the two of us.
And that is.
I didn't know that. Is that true? How rude. She's trying so hard.
You guys cast several roles with people that you met in Española or who lived in the area, and as you mentioned, weren't necessarily actors. As performers, you know, what is it like working with non-actors, and what did you learn from that experience?
What did we learn from that?
As performers, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's amazing, I think, when you're getting people that, like, a lot of the people in the show actually, like, did the job, like, in some of these small roles, they do the job in real life. So I think for us, like, we're sort of envisioning it and talking to people, but it's like if you're with someone, you know, who is, you're seeing how they operate, you sort of, it's like, you start to feel like very fake in comparison to them. And so I think it really makes you elevate to that level that they're working at. And so I think it's helpful for me in like those circumstances. Everything, even with the professional actors who are more experienced, it's like Barkhad, you see him a little bit in this and comes back more. Barkhad Abdi's like an incredible performer, and he just feels so human. So you're in a scene with him, and if your performance is a little not real, it'll come out. So you sort of like, you know, these people sort of like help work as a barometer you try to surround yourself with everyone who's going to bring a level of realism that
At one
we have
point,
to live up to.
at one point, Barcod was in a scene, and I guess somebody asked him like, "Oh, where did you get those things?" And he pointed. He said, "Oh, I work at the grocery store over there." And when he pointed, everybody, I'm not joking, everybody on the crew looked as if expecting to see a grocery store right at the end of his finger. And he just had such a control over that kind of naturalism. It's unbelievable. But I prefer the term first-time actor.
Okay.
Because it's just the first time that they're getting to experience what that's like. And if they take it from there, great. If not, even it's okay too. But it's just a matter of, it's the first time that this has happened, and I don't know. You know, I feel like this is like you're saying, Nizhonniya, it's the first time you've ever acted. Doesn't mean it's gonna be the last time, so it's not non-acting, you know?
Nizhonniya, were you watching them being like, God, these guys are fake?
No.
Sometimes we do that.
Oh, you were
You're
testing.
figuring it out a little bit.
So, Nathan directed, I believe, 7 of the 10 episodes, is that right?
Yeah.
So here's a question for everyone but Nathan. How does his approach as a director differ from his approach as an actor, a scene partner?
And compared to Yorgos Lanthimos.
Well, I think that you know, it's so interesting. I have to put this down. I'm sorry. There. You guys saw that before. I thought it was so fascinating because Nathan is extremely detail oriented, and it also made sense because of what he's done before. Like with Nathan for Your, especially the rehearsal, which was coming out while we were shooting this, so we didn't know what the rehearsal was going to be. He was finishing editing, and then it started airing, I think, like right in the middle of our shoot. So every week there would be a new episode of the rehearsal, and I was like, "What the fuck did you?" Sorry, are there kids here? No. Steven was in this. Okay. I was like, "What the fuck did you make? Like, this is insane." And it made his directing make so much sense because I was like, in all the experiences that he had had before, like he would be like, "This thing on the wall is whatever." He'd be like, "But that's not in your shot." You know, like it's not in your shot, but he would get obsessed with like a small detail that was off camera, basically, in my memory of it. And I was like, well, of course, because he's used to the entire environment, you know, needing to be a particular way for the type of work that he makes. And then all of a sudden he'd be in the scene and he'd be like manic or angry or like, you know, so full of emotion. It was just so fascinating to watch him go back and forth between this really
I feel like
meticulous,
you're a doctor
detail-oriented person.
diagnosing me with something.
I'll tell you your diagnosis later. No, but you know, the super meticulous to really emotional was an amazing thing to watch him go back and forth between. It was really, really impressive. And
I want to say too, just about it, that from the start of this project, it's been with Benny and I, it's been extremely collaborative, and the visual style and everything we're seeing like is a very collaborative process. So like it's all like, you know, we were in it together from the very start, and all the decisions you see on screen are made with a lot of like conversations between us and really making sure like we're both charged and excited about like the approach to every scene.
The rule was, if one of us is unhappy with it, it's always gonna be worse than if we're both on board with the decision. So it wasn't compromising, it was truly like finding the best solution, you know, because if one of us had an issue, it was for a reason, you know, and it was like we would talk it out and figure it out.
Is it